There's two perceptions: how you want to be thought of before you've met your customer, and how you want to be thought of after they've met you.
Hello Sales Nation and welcome to the Salesman Podcast live in partnership with HubSpot and recorded at the Sales Innovation Expo down in London. On this show we have Chris Murray. He is a sales expert and author of Selling with Ease, and on today's show we're diving into what EASE, the acronym of that essentially, and the 4 steps that come up in every single deal. You can find out more about Chris over at firstsalestraining.co.uk. That's 1stsalstraining.co.uk. We'll link to that and everything else that we talk about in the show notes of this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with all that said, let's jump in to today's show. Chris, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Glad to be here. Hi.
I'm excited to have you on. I appreciate the little bit of time before we click record to run through a few things. That's always a good indicator that a show is going to go well, that you're interested enough to come and hang out a little bit before we click record. So I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm going to ask you a super leading question. I know where this is going to go. You know where this is going to go. But then we'll probably deviate from that and we'll narrow down and go down some rabbit holes later on in the show. But if every deal has 4 steps, what are those steps? We'll define them and then we'll run through and we'll add some context to them for the audience.
Absolutely. Well, we broke it down to an acronym called EASE. E-A-S-E. First one's earn the right. Second one is ask the appropriate questions. Solve the problem and execute the solution. And surprisingly, the first two are probably the most important for sales success. When people ask me to go and do some sales training for the team, most of the time I get asked, can you focus on closing? If they could just close more deals, we'll get more business, which is partly true. But actually, it's earn the right and ask the appropriate questions right at the beginning that makes the biggest difference to virtually the success of every opportunity. Because if I don't trust you with the money at the beginning, I definitely won't trust you with the money at the end.
So let's dive into earn. I think we can talk about this for 4 hours straight here. And I genuinely mean that, because this is something I think is just not got. People just don't understand this, that
no.
If you were selling to my brother here behind the camera, if I wanted to pitch him on something, I'd feel like I'd have to earn the right to his time, to the potential for winning the business, and to the time to have the context and the conversation around it. I wouldn't just go in and say, hey, I want you to do XYZ, here's a bill, or here's my pitch.
No, sure.
There's a level of trust that needs to be earned. There's a level of rapport that needs to be earned.
Yep.
First off, why don't we do this? Is it because we're selfish? Is that why?
No, it's because we like to sell at people rather than helping them buy from. And I don't know why it happens, but as soon as people put on the sales trilby and move forward, they turn into the salespeople they don't want to be sold to. The salesperson, the ideal salesperson you should want to be, should surely be very similar to the salesperson you'd like to serve you. So why do we act like salespeople from 1965 business movies? I don't know. Everybody's seen enough episodes of The Apprentice and Wolf of Wall Street. We know when we're being sold at. But what people buy, and the reason that people move forward, and we have to earn the right to move forward, is value and trust. I can't move forward if I don't trust you. And if that doesn't enable you to give me time to understand your value, then I definitely won't buy anything from you. But we call it the commitment gap in Vada Cruz, the training company I run. Right at the beginning of Earn the Right, Ask the Appropriate Questions, if it's a straight line across the bottom of getting a sale, that sale could have probably been achieved by a small monkey in a business suit with a brochure. It was always going to happen.
Yeah.
On the other side of the axis will be no sale straight up. But most sales go at a sort of a jaunty angle, that 1 degree angle at the beginning, whereas I just don't feel like you care. I don't feel like you really want to help me. And because of that, I start treating you like every other salesperson I've ever met. And that 1 degree angle, by the time you get to the 4th quadrant of the sale, by the time you get to the end, it's so off the I'll have it right now. It's more of a, do you know what, I'll think about it, or send me some stuff through. That's where that commitment gap takes you to. Anthony Robbins tells a great story about a plastic surgeon who's mapped out the perfect face and has a book on his coffee table, mathematically working out exactly what makes beautiful people beautiful. And it turns out that the bit between the lip and the nose is called the philtrum. If that's the same size as your eye, exactly the same size as your eye, perfect face. 1 millimeter out either way, normal, and 2 millimeters out, according to Anthony Robbins, but ugly. Right? 1 millimeter out. Take the same 1 millimeter out analogy and take it a step further. You take a boat from Liverpool to New York. If you're 1 degree out, you don't end up just outside New York. You end up all the way up in Canada.
Yeah.
And it's the same with every sale. Being 1 degree out, not earning the trust right at the beginning, not moving forward and earning the right. That's where it sets you. It sets you off on that commitment gap. And I'll just tell you, I'll go and look somewhere else.
Is there a process and a step-by-step process to get to that point? And what I mean by that is, it seems that we've got to first break through the noise of all the sales communication that's out there.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities to add a bit of rapport or add the potential of value by leading with insights, whether it's an email or cold call, whatever it is. If you can lead with a conversation rather than your product, if you can lead with an insight that makes the time worthwhile to reply to you or to get on the phone, that's one step. But then I feel like there's another step of differentiation of earning the right to have the time for a sales call, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
How do we go through these step by step? And then I'm guessing there's probably another 20 steps that can potentially come in a big B2B deal before we get to the point where they're seriously considering your offer.
Well, first thing is how you feel about your job within yourself, how you're approaching it. I like to say change sales for help. If I deal with a number of people who don't count themselves as salespeople, but when they're in a sales training situation, say, I don't want to learn how to sell. I'm not in sales. I design kitchens, or I'm a bridge engineer. I don't need to be able to sell anything. I'm just here because my company sent me. If you the question then is, do you not want to help your customers make really great buying decisions then? Well, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to help them. Or just change sell for help. The two perceptions you've got to think about when we're talking about to simplify those 20 steps of earning the right. There's two perceptions: how you want to be thought of before you've met your customer, and how you want to be thought of after they've met you. And if you can actually spend a whole day working out what you're going to improve, what you're going to work on, what's important to you and your customer, and then go in to help. Honestly, the first thing I realized when I started up my own company was everybody comes in to sell you a box. Nobody comes in to help. You'll get some young sales guy come into the office with a box and says, there you are, I've been sent to sell you a box, would you like a box? No, I don't. I've got lots of things that keep me up at night, right? But I don't, as far as I'm aware, the box isn't going to cure them. And they say, go on, it's 50 quid for a box. Do you want a box for 50 quid? No, I don't want the box. Tough man, Chris, 45. No, yeah. I don't see the value and I don't trust you. You haven't come in to help and you don't even see the value in the thing you're selling. Here's the other thing. Evangelist, it's a crazy shift here. Evangelist standing on the corner of Hyde Park, standing on a wooden box, Bible in hand. Right? They're not telling you about the land of milk and honey and heaven to get them there. As far as they're concerned, they're already going. They're worried that you'll miss out. That's what bothered them. They're already going. It's a done deal. They're concerned that you'll miss out. And salespeople have got to be evangelical about what they're selling. You wouldn't wake up in the morning with a cure for a horrible disease and then think, do you know what? I'll give it another hour. You go and help people.
Sure.
Yeah. And once we realise that, when that's shining through your eyes, when you actually get to sit in front of somebody or get somebody on the phone, what you should be really trying to do, what you should be passionate about is saying, I have to help you, because if I don't help you, somebody's going to come and rip you off or sell you something you don't need, and I've got the exact thing you need. I have to help you. Now, we all know that we can't help everybody. We can't even help our closest friends sometimes, But you can't save them all. But actually starting from if the guy with the box came in and said, Chris, I know what your business problems are, I know what you're going through, and I have the thing to solve that problem, then we'd have a conversation.
So let's take a step back and let's go into maybe we should define this. I think this is perhaps a useful exercise for the audience of what we think the prospect should think about us beforehand and what they should think about us after. We can almost do this for each step of the sales process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What would be a practical example of this, of how they should feel about us when they first get the email, call, meeting, whatever it is, and how should they look at us after that initial conversation?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the perception before you go in. You know, there's a number of things you can control. But an old boss of mine once told me, taking it right up to the point before we even start speaking, that you've got. It used to be a Swanvester match. I don't know if you can still get a Swanvester match, but it used to take about 5 seconds for that to burn down. And people allegedly have made 80% of their minds up about the perception they already have of you. So all those control things, and people think that I'm sort of like raking over all ground, and everybody knows how to look after themselves these days.
Yeah.
But you've got to wonder why so many salespeople look like an unmade bed. You know, it's. If you don't respect me enough to come and look after yourself before you get in there, then that's just the perception I've got of you. Before you're on the phone, on the email, are you trying to help, or are you trying to sell before you even got there to me? I don't know how many emails you get on a daily basis, but I must delete 200-300 of people who can't even be bothered putting my name on the top. You know.
So I was talking about this on a previous show, but I don't think we actually clicked record when it went on. But I have a Facebook group for Sales Nation, the audience, and I don't really advertise it, and so people have to find it. So it's usually the super fans that find themselves in. There's a bunch of people here today that have come over and said that they're part of the Facebook group. So every time I get a horrible sales email, I'll scribble out who it's from, to do my kind of little bit to save them, and I'll post it in there. So I had one recently, and it's a company not here today, but they were here. They were at the Revenue Summit when we were in San Francisco 2 weeks ago. And they came over and they knew who I was and they were very polite and they liked the show and they were pitching to get their CEO on the show and at a later date. So they had context of, me specifically, that I'm Will Barron, I host this podcast.
Sure.
I got an email from them 2 days later, kind of like labeled "Dear Betty," and then going on about a huge CRM system that I don't need a CRM system. I've only got HubSpot, Salesforce, like 4 customers that I work with. I don't, perhaps I need some kind of documentation system to keep track of invoicing and things like that. But they certainly didn't have any context on it. And then clearly I'm not Betty.
Is it just for your close friends? Is that
yeah, it's just at the weekend. That's after a couple of pints on later on tonight for everyone here.
Yeah, maybe you got that close and you gave them Betty by accident.
Yeah, maybe I don't remember them. Those conversations from that evening before.
So I got Sharon yesterday. I mean, honestly, I got a hi Sharon. Thanks for your time earlier on the phone. Right. Well, A, I hadn't spoken to you, and B, I'm not Sharon.
Yeah. So it's crazy. And clearly that puts a bad taste in my mouth. I will never do any business with them, from whether they want to sponsor the show or whether they want to sell me a product. And, I'll be polite about it, and I probably would explain if they asked me. But this is going out all the time.
Yeah.
You could burn through especially when salespeople are involved in this rather than marketers, you could burn through a list of 5,000 potential customers, and they're just done. And they're never going to speak to you again, especially when you're dealing with the C-suite, with the top-end decision makers who they get so much of this, they're perhaps less forgiving.
Sure.
So going back to this idea of what we should be each step of the process, is there a defined evolution of how we should be recognized by the prospect? Should we start off with it's only trust and the value that we can give? Then further along the line, perhaps trust is assumed. So then we go into more rapport and deeper level conversations about their needs.
Sure.
Is there a process so we can monitor ourselves on how we're tracking things, so that we know once we've achieved these 3 or 4 things, then we can talk about our product, and because we've earned it at that point?
Well, ease is a cycle, and it starts off with earn the right. But the top of the cycle is commitment, and the bottom is understanding. And as you move down to the bottom, and you've got to ask the appropriate questions and solve the problem, that's where we understand the customer, and then we help the customer understand how we can help. But at the top, as you move back into execute the solution, you move back into commitment, and that's where the customer commits. Not a big fan of the word closing, because closing, apart from sounding quite final, makes it sound like that's not what we were trying to achieve from the beginning. We're just going to do it now. And there's no Jedi mind trick for sales. There's no, we get to the end, we've been rubbish, please buy off me. That's not going to happen.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, but the other thing is, first of all, nobody give it away in a $14.99 book, right? And secondly, the government would probably own it.
It's true. It's true.
Or we'd all have houses full of tat, because we'd buy everything off everybody else, and then they'd buy everything off us. Yeah. And yes, it just wouldn't work. But
I like the way you said that, and I like this analogy, because I get a lot of Sales Nation email me, and I ask them to email me the problems or the things that are holding them back in sales, and a lot of times I don't have the answers, but good majority of the time, and you will get some of these emails most likely, I'll with your willingness, I'll send them to yourself, and then you can go back to the audience, or you can give me your thoughts and I'll go back to them on
No,
behalf of yourself.
With pleasure, send them through, yeah.
So things like that. But a lot of the time they're asking for a silver bullet.
Yeah.
They're asking for solve all my problems in this one email, one sentence email.
Yes.
And that's never the case, is it?
No. If there is a silver bullet, it's to become evangelical about what you're selling and to actually care that much. Because Zig Ziglar used to say that sales was a transference of feeling.
Yeah.
By that I mean, if I can make you feel the way I feel about what I'm talking about, then we'll have a great conversation. But the trouble is most salespeople don't feel anything. Yeah. They're just sent out with the box to sell, and they go and sell the box, they do or they don't. If you actually feel something, if you feel like you need what I've got,
yeah,
I've been sent out by my business to help you get it and tell you why it's going to work. That transference of feeling. You've got to have that built up and ready to sort of like explode with a customer. That I feel so passionately about helping you that really, if you send me away, it's to the detriment of both of us. And that's the only silver bullet you need. It doesn't matter whether you are trying to convince someone to be influenced by you, to buy off you, to whether it's an interview or you're just trying to get an idea across to a non-for-profit. If you feel passionately about it, you'll be surprised how much of the rest of the room goes with you along it. If it gets to the end and I can't, turns out that you can't help me, then we shake hands and we move away. But you'll get to the end of the cycle just by being evangelistic.
For sure, and there's an element of rapport in that as well. You might not be able to help them now, but you're going to be the first person that they get back to in 12 months' time when you can help them. Especially if you were first in and you were mature about it and you were doing the whole business development role as opposed to kind of like burn them and crash and burn kind of thing, which a lot of salespeople do, unfortunately. Yeah. And you said something here which fascinates me, which is this idea of commitment over a close.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the cycle, this ease cycle. Is this something that we should be focused on, of getting lots of small commitments leading up to the close almost happening in itself? That becomes the natural next step then of we've done everything, we've solved all your problems, versus, again, using weird closing techniques of, do you want it now or next Wednesday?
If the desired outcome of a sale is to close the business at the end, then as soon as you open your mouth, every word and action taking place is part of the close. The close isn't something that says thank you very much at the end. It's the sale. To close a sale is why you started it. So the close started a turn the right, and it finished with execute the solution.
Yeah.
It didn't just begin somewhere later on. Negotiation takes place at the end. That's a fact. Closing starts at the beginning. Yeah.
And does this tie back into then this fact of cycles within the sales process itself? Because I think a lot of us, and there's loads of acronyms and ways to describe it,
sure,
but essentially you have like the prospecting, you have the information stage, and you have the closing negotiation stage, and there might be 10 others in between.
Yeah.
But should this be cyclic? Should this be you're sussing out if you can solve a problem, you do your best to position yourself in a position to that, you gain a bit of commitment, and then the conversation just keep deeper and deeper and deeper until there's an exchange of value in a cash PO invoice. Is that how we should look at it? Because that's a different way of looking at it.
Well, I was going to say this, one of the secrets, but they're not secrets. One of the main things to look at is find people that you can truly help. Stop trying to sell to everybody. If you can find people who you can truly help, then tell them how and then help them. Perry Marshall, the pay-per-click guru over in Chicago, tells a great story about racking the shotgun. And I love this story. He has a friend who went to play poker in Las Vegas. And he decided to go and play poker with an old hand, try and win a bit of money. And the old hand takes him off strip and to a small bar. It's smoky, it's dark, there's a very heavy smell of bourbon. And the old hand says, watch this. And underneath his coat, he has a shotgun. And he racks the shotgun, he clicks it to load it. And 8 people turn around and look. And the old guy says, we're not playing poker with those 8 people because they know what a shotgun sounds like, right? Yeah. Everybody else we can play, those people are dangerous. Yeah? With marketing and sales, you've got to rack the shotgun. Every time somebody falls away and says, I'm not your customer, that's great. You rack the shotgun, they're not a customer, find somebody who is. Stop trying to sell to people who don't want what you've got. Find people who really need your help and then help them. And I mean, once You know,
It sounds so simple.
Oh, I did. Well, Daniel Priestley wrote a book called Oversubscribed. We've only got so many hours in every day,
Yeah.
you know, and we've only got so many days in every year that we can sell to. I've got 40 years. I've got 40 weeks a year when I can train, and I usually do around about 2 days of training or keynotes within that time. So I've got 80 training days. Essentially, I can look after 4 companies who need 20 days training a year, or 10 in a day. That's me oversubscribed, right? I don't want to sell to everybody. I want to find 8 people I can really help. And whatever it is that you're selling, that's what you should be doing.
Does this all stem from people's pipelines not being full enough? Does a lot of these issues get solved because then you can allow even your customers to pre-qualify themselves if you've got enough healthy leads perhaps in your pipeline?
Yeah, well, you know the old saying that a watch kettle never boils. Yeah, that was quite clearly created before the electric kettle. Yeah, but even when it was on a fire, it was nonsense then. You know, if you watch a kettle, it'll boil eventually. The only reason a kettle doesn't boil is either it's not close enough to the fire, or the fire needs to get hotter. You know, with sales, your fire needs to get better. You either need a better database, or you need to get closer to it. It's all about the actions of the people that are involved. And do you know what? I am so tired these days of hearing salespeople who just can't be bothered. There's a big sales myth, right? And I'm going to go off on a tangent in a second.
Go for it.
There's a big sales myth that sales and cold calling died away around about 20 years ago when the internet popped up.
Yep.
Yeah. The trouble is that didn't happen. What happened was we were all sold snake oil and silver bullets, and a large proportion of the sales population believed it. 15 years on, the people who bought that snake oil are now sales managers, and we've got the second generation of people who've forgotten how to prospect. And I saw photocopies in the 80s. You know, I was knocking on doors in the rain. People couldn't find me on the internet. You know, if I was lucky, somebody might find me in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
But then it was the first person that got to the phone in the office. This selling hasn't changed as much as people think it has, and everybody's looking for an easy road rather than a successful one.
I totally agree, and we won't dive too far into this, and we'll wrap up with this. I'm happy to talk about this all night, because I've got a bee in my bonnet about social selling, and I think it's just sales, but a different platform.
Yes.
It's no more complex, it's still the same. Social selling, you're earning the right to get that phone call perhaps by giving them a bit of value, send them whatever content, or creating content from your own personal insights and forward that over, whether it's through an email, whether it's a tweet, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Obviously, it depends on industries and verticals. But there's something that we've been talking about on the show for a while of, this social selling it's almost seen as a magic bullet at this moment in time. And it's just a brand that people are selling on the back of, isn't it?
We used to send people letters before there were emails, and then we used to phone them. It's not, and now we send them emails and say, look what we've done, haven't we been clever, look at the social selling, you know? And people say they don't like to cold call, but most people have been to some level of networking event, you know? So you've got a load of people who hopefully are possibly your target market, otherwise you're in the wrong networking event. So you've got a load of people who could be your target market. You walk up to them, you introduce yourself, and you tell them what you do, and you have a conversation. That's cold calling in person. That's all that is. But oh no, I'm networking. No, that's what cold calling is all about. Doing it well and being able to have a conversation and be able to achieve the outcome you're after. That just takes a bit of time and effort.
Amazing stuff. Well, we'll have you back on the main show as well to
run out of time,
dive into this more. We're running out of time.
Sorry.
But Chris, I've got one final question, something to ask everyone that comes on the show.
Yes.
That is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
You don't know it all, start reading. Yeah.
When did you discover this? I discovered this about midway through working in sales. I discovered that books were not these boring things that only nerds read.
I was just about to get into sales management, so thank God for that.
Amazing stuff. Well, tell us a little bit about your book, which for everyone listening, I'm holding it up, everyone on the video can see this. Tell us a little bit about your book, where we can find it, and then your sales training company as well.
Absolutely. Well, Amazon, all good bookstores, all good online shops. Great thing I'll say about this, and I'll give the guy a plug as well. The foreword is by a guy called Jeb Blount, who wrote Fanatical Prospecting, and has just got a great new book out called Sales EQ. Absolutely fantastic book. He loved it, and anything Jeb Blount loves, as far as I'm concerned, is good enough for me. The fact that it's got his seal of approval on the front really made my day. And what can I say about it? There is nothing in there that doesn't work in real life. There's too much out. There's two types of sales guru out there, which I don't profess to being either, by the way. But there's the one that tries to make it into some kind of alchemy, and the one that says that there's some level of silver bullet, and all you have to do is sit at home, and people will flood you with opportunity.
Yeah.
Neither of those are true. I fell down, and I hold my hands up this. I fell down flat on my face for 20 years, so that people could spend a little bit of time with me, so that they don't have to. And the ideas and the reasons that I found to move sales forward and uncover opportunities, I popped in there. That's essentially the foundation sales training day that we do for our training days.
Good stuff. Well, we'll link to the book, everything else in the show notes to this episode of salesmanpodcast.com. Like Chris, I want to thank you for your time and for joining us on the show.
Pleasure, thanks.